Welcome back, and this just in from Woj. For the first time, the Grizzlies will be listening to trade offers on franchise stars Marc Gasol and Mike Conley from the league sources. That's what they told ESPN. Memphis has reached a crossroads, guys. They have really been struggling here the last month or so, losing a lot of games, not showing the kind of fight. There was some issues in the locker room at one point with this group. What do you all foresee materializing? Do we ultimately think you're going to see a Marc Gasol or Mike Conley Jr. in a different uniform?
It's definitely a possibility. I think I love Mike Conley, and I like the way he plays. And I've said this before, out of all the point guards who are playing today, at the end of the game, I would trust him the most to take the ball, put it in the right place, make a free throw, make a shot, and, understand the play that we've called in the huddle and make it work out on the floor. I think he's the most trusted point guard in the league. I don't know if there will be teams out there that are takers with the salary that he has and the salary that Gasol has. Mm-hmm. So it'll be interesting to see, but you add Conley to the right team. He's a game changer, for the right team if you're talking about trying to win a championship.
Yeah, both those guys can play with great players.
Yeah.
Both those guys can be 3 or 4 options on any single night and be completely happy doing it. Both those guys have high basketball IQs. And I tell you what, if you want to get better and you're a really championship level caliber team, get one of those 2 guys on your team because they're just gonna, and there's gonna be nice they can carry you too.
Yeah.
So, but they don't care if they're not carrying. You know what I mean? I'm a little higher right now on Conley just because I just think he can do more. I think Gasol's getting a little bit older. I think he's 34 now. I think.
Yeah.
And so, but I tell you what, either one of those guys, if you're a contending team and you can get those guys. I mean, that's hard, but I just think Memphis is going to be in a tough position. They're going to try to trade those guys for high draft choices and rebuild. And a lot of the lesser teams don't need those 2 guys.
Yeah.
They're like, they're in different trajectories. So, man, that's tough because those 2 guys need to go to a championship caliber team, and the championship caliber team probably doesn't have the assets that Memphis wants. So they're going to be stuck.
Yeah. Yeah, and you talked about Marc Gasol is averaging the fewest points since the 13-14 season, but still a lot left in the tank. Mm-hmm. But there are some teams, though, if you think about it. First team popped in my head was a team like Detroit. Again, not necessarily a championship team, but a guy like one of those 2, and probably more so Conley Jr., maybe gets them in the postseason. And I think that's something also you got to think about because rebuilding is difficult.
Right. Then do you want their draft choice, though? Yeah. If you're Memphis saying, okay, if we give them Conley, they're going to make the playoffs.
Well, but what if they don't?
Draft 15.
Yeah.
I'm saying.
That's the point.
When you trade a guy,
having
had that
salary for salary, which is.
I was just going to say, Zeke, we were in that position. Man, let me tell you something. You think about that. You think, okay, if they get this guy, that draft choice isn't going to be as good.
Yep.
And so there's a lot of stuff that comes into this. And that's why I said it's going to be interesting. Because Memphis probably wants to start over with some of the young guys, Jackson, some of the guys they have, which means you want really high lottery picks. And the teams that need these guys probably are going to be drafting in the 20s.
Yeah.
So that's tough.
Well, speaking of Memphis, you were just in Memphis with Mike Conley Jr., talking a little bit about the late, great Martin Luther King Jr. Let's get out there and hear a little bit of that convo with our own Isaiah and Mike Conley. Going on in Oklahoma City as we get ready for this battle. DZ?
Well, guys, first of all, it's a little chilly here in OKC. I don't know what the weather is back in Atlanta.
It's cold here, too.
It's cold there, too?
Cold,
yeah.
Oh, my goodness. So, that being said, hopefully the cold weather stays outside the arena because OKC Thunder is playing better defense. That slipped a little bit. Paul George playing at an MVP level. And you talked about Dame Lillard and C.J. McCollum. Now we have to talk about Nurkic. He's playing better basketball. He's just talking to some of the guys as they're warming up. Nurkic is tired of people saying who's the 3rd guy for Portland. So it should be a good ball game tonight.
It really should. And you look at this Thunder team, all the talk coming in was how great they'd been defensively, but that's not been the case here of late for this group, DZ. What's the thought process with how they're playing on that side of the ball?
Well, they understand that teams have come into their building and shot the ball with confidence. And the first team that comes to mind the other night when the Los Angeles Lakers came in here and played lights-out basketball with Kyle Kuzma shooting the 3 and getting anywhere on the floor like he wanted to. So they realized teams are going to come in and give them their best shot. They need to regroup, Guys off the bench understand when they come in, they got to lock down and play good team defense. But no panic. I say it again, no panic, because a guy named Paul George is playing really, really good.
You know, 3D, they going up against a great backcourt tonight when you talk about Lillard and McCollum. What strategy do you think they will implement tonight defensively to try to slow those two guys down?
Well, try to keep them off the three-point line, and when they split the double team, Isaiah, you know this, you're one of the best to ever do it. When they split that double team, make sure those big guys step up in the lane like Kevin McHale used to do, and not so much block the shot, but deter the shot and try to get some of those shooting percentages to come down, because we know you're not going to stop them all night long. We want them to work for every shot they get tonight.
You know, Dennis, what I want you to do is go tell Adams that Nurkic wants to have a big game tonight, because I want to see what Adams does to him. I look at OKC, and I think Adams just really, when he's playing well, he's defensive rebounding, he's offensive rebounding, but he's really clogging the paint and just helping recover. Talk to me a little bit about Adams and Adams' ability to really help that OKC defense.
Well, I think Paul George has done an excellent job, guys, believe it or not, throwing the ball down low to your point, K-Mac, to Steven Adams. Just let him touch it. He doesn't always try to shoot the basketball because he's a great passer out of the mid-post. So sometimes let the big guy eat a little bit. He sets better screens. He defends more for you, and now you can get out and run and get easy baskets.
So 3D, is it raining out there? Is it snowing? Because we just saw a shot of Adams walking in.
Yeah. He looked like the abominable.
It was raining.
Yes, was that guy?
It was raining earlier. It stopped raining, but man, I cannot lie. I didn't bring my big coat. I brought my southern coat. I'm chilly.
Man, you can get up under his coat.
Hold on. That's the kind of guy when you're walking down the street, you see him coming, you go to the other side of the street.
You go take off running. You go.
Who is that guy?
All right, DG, we're going to check back in with you a little bit later. Let's talk a little bit more, guys, about this Thunder team, because you know, when the season started, they probably had as many question marks as anybody after how the season ended a season ago. But defensively, they were a juggernaut for quite a while. But then now it seems like they've hit a stretch where defense has not been their calling card. Do you see them returning to that? And also, do you guys see them as a legit contender in that Western Conference?
You know, I was one of the guys early in preseason. I wasn't sure if OKC, in thinking that the West would be as tough as it is, with Russell missing games, with Westbrook missing games early in the season, I didn't know if they would fall so far behind that they wouldn't be able to make up the games. However, you know, you got to give Billy Donovan a lot of credit, because he and Paul George and that group, they did a great job of holding down the fort. And when Russ came back, they just took off. So, you know, I like where they are defensively, and I think there's so much room to grow and improve for the OKC Thunder.
Yeah, I tell you what, when they're playing good defense, they're switching to deny the passes. When they're not playing good defense, they're laying back off it. And, you know, we get a switch down here. You know how hard it is when guys can play off switches. You're uptight, you're denying, you're getting a hand in. They get deflections, they get steals when they're doing that. What I've seen lately a little bit is they've been a little bit more passive on the defensive end, allowing those passes to flow freely on the perimeter. I just think when they're up, pressuring, they're a much better team. So we'll see tonight if they get back to pressure, how many deflections, how many steals. And the reason that I'm believing in this team, you asked, you know, where can they go in the playoffs? When you can score off your defense, that gives you such a big bounce, especially in the playoffs when scoring becomes at a premium. When you can get 4 or 5 of those deflections for runouts and get yourself 12, 14, 15 points off those deflections and steals, that's huge. And so I'm believing in this team. Favorite thing about, you know, the OKC lately is that Russell Westbrook is not pressing his offense. He's not having those 6 for 30 games. He was 6 for 12 last night.
Yeah.
Damn near had a triple-double, had 10 rebounds, 9 assists. And when you can control the game by taking 12 shots, you are a basketball player. You're not a numbers correct.
Yeah. And that used to always be the judge of if your point guard is really controlling the game by, you know, how many shot attempts he has to take or doesn't take. And the average was about, if you took 12 to 15 shots a night and you can control the game that way and you have your imprint on the assist box, you're sharing the basketball, that's when you knew you were doing, you know, a great job. And then guys like Magic would come along and they control the game with 4 shots. Yeah. and you would be like, hey, we're not even talking about you tonight, exactly. Magic. You know, you're in a totally different category. But that's what Westbrook is doing. And not only that, he's also accepted the challenge of becoming a better defender. This is the first time I've ever heard him really talk about becoming an elite defender as opposed to being an elite offensive player. And when you have he and Paul George as two elite defenders on your team, you got a chance to beat anybody.
And, you know, wrapping up on Westbrook, he's not getting those 3 or 4 extra layups he got a game because, you know, your shooting percentage looks a hell of a lot better when you're beating everybody and you're getting 4 or 5, 6 layups at the rim. He's not getting those right now. I mean, I don't know if he's just doesn't quite have the explosiveness he had or whatever. You know, he's such a freakish athlete, but he's just not getting those shots. And so those always make your shooting percentage look a hell of a lot better.
And do you guys think, though, big picture, this is a team that doesn't shoot the 3 well, although they were terrific in their last game, shot 52% from beyond, made 15. But along with Westbrook and this group, do they shoot it well enough, though, to where they can really put some fear in some of those elite teams in that Western Conference once we get to the postseason?
If the right people are shooting it, if Abrinas can come back and get healthy, he's a good shooter for him. Paul George makes his share of threes, you know, shoots a decent percentage from the three-point line. I'd like to see them add another shooter. But again, you know, to me, the 3, it's all relative to who's shooting it. If you have 20% shooters shooting a lot of threes, you're going to be a lousy three-point shooting team. I mean, it doesn't take a whole lot of math to figure that out. And sometimes they have the wrong people shooting the threes. If they have the right people shooting the threes, put them in the right position, you got some drive, you got some kick going out, yeah, I'd like to see them add another shooter. I really would. You know, I think it just fills out their roster. But again, you know, we talked about it a couple weeks ago. San Antonio has the right people shooting threes. And they don't shoot a bunch of them, but they make a bunch of them. They make a high percentage of what they shoot. I think OKC's got to have a little bit of some of that. That being said, I'd like to see them trade for a shooter if they could.
I agree with Kevin. I do think that at some point in time during this period, they have to seek out a 3-point shooter to add to the roster. But that shooter's got to be able to defend also.
Yes.
He just can't be a guy that's a specialist that knocks down shots. He's got to be able to defend on both ends so they can play him and keep him in the game. And I also think that shot selection is extremely important. And what I'm seeing with OKC right now is their shot selection has become much better. And if they continue to have good shot selection, then they'll be okay.
Okay, and speaking of selection, I'm going to select this moment to give a shout out to my kids. My daughter Naomi and my son Tyson are watching. They're big fans. And also interact with all of us here socially at NBA TV.
Not
myself,
me.
at Anthony 50, at Isaiah Thomas, and at Kevin McHale. Just try it. You never know. Somebody probably has that account right now.
The problem is it's that actor, and they keep on mistaking me for some 4'11" actor. And I'm like, that is not me. I promise you. I'm 6'11".
All right.
You get mistaken for the.
Welcome back, and let's take a look at this Trailblazer team in the new year. 8-3. Look at that offensive and the opponent points given up. They've been playing spectacular basketball. They're also doing a heck of a job of passing the basketball. They had 30 assists in that win against Utah, and it's the 10th time in the last 12 games that they've had at least 25 assists. So the ball movement has been there. The defense has been consistent. So this is a team that seems to be getting their identity, figuring out who they are as we make a push towards the midway point.
Yeah, and when you're talking about making a push towards the midway point, this is a time when you want to be playing your best basketball, offensively and defensively, before you go into the break. Because, you know, so many times we see teams kind of sputtering into the break, and then they always think, okay, well, after the break, we're going to get better. And then after the break, before you know it, they've lost 5, 6 in a row, and their season's down the tube. So this is definitely the best time to be playing some of your best basketball.
Yeah, and I like the fact that they're moving the ball a lot. I think sometimes they get so guard heavy with McCollum and Dame shooting so many tough shots. Like, you know, when they're playing poorly, I just think they're taking those tough, you know, taking big hops to your left to get your jump shot off and stuff. When they're moving the ball, they're a much better team. And I think all these teams can move the ball well when you have a guy like a Nurkic who's a pretty good basketball player in the middle. Who, you know, if you have a big guy that can pass the ball, you normally have it normally just makes the ball flow from side to side because Nurkic isn't shooting threes and stuff. So when you get that swing pass to your trailer coming down, things usually just happen smoothly through that. So I like when they're playing like that. I get frustrated with this team sometimes. I think they take too many tough shots, and that, to me, if you hit those tough shots in the playoff, everything's rosy. If you miss those tough shots in the playoff, you can lose to anybody. So I like the way they're playing now, a little bit more ball movement, not taking as many tough shots.
You guys talked a little bit about Nurkic and how good he's been. He had 22, 8, 7 assists, 6 blocks against Utah in that last game. And that's already the 4th game this season where he's had at least 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 5 blocks from that center position, which takes some pressure off of them having to take all those tough shots. And is he the key as to whether or not this team gets to the next level? Because as you talked about in the break, Kevin, if McCollum and there are going to be nights when your perimeter players aren't making shots. Right. You've got to be able to create offense in other ways. Is this guy going to be the key, you think, Isaiah, for whether or not they get to the top of the mountain?
I think he's a key because they need a consistent third. And, you know, they already have the outside covered. And when he can consistently score inside, you know, he's a big factor. However, to consistently score inside, you need consistent touches. And
consistent effort by him, too.
Yeah.
Agreed. You know.
And I don't know if he will get enough consistent touches. But I think the key to them, you know, on the perimeter for me is when Evan Turner comes in, what kind of game does he have? You know, can he give them those 12 to 14 points that sometimes they're missing in those stretches where they can't score and they can't get over the hump. So I think, you know, if he can kind of, you know, get himself, you know, steady within that offense and play consistent, then I think he can get him over the hump.
Yeah, you know, I think Stotts has got to challenge Nurkic and say, you got to be that guy. I mean, this is just the way it is. So every night I need X amount of effort from you. I need X amount of rolling. I just need you to play with a high energy level and a high intensity level every single night, because he's proven he has the talent to do it. I mean, just look at the numbers he had the other night against Utah. He can do it, but you got to do it every single night, you know. And that's the difference between. And I can't tell you how many players I've looked at and they say, well, that guy's really good. I said, yeah, 40% of the time. I said, if you want to be a great player, you got to do it 90% of the time. If you're really a great player, you have very few just terrible games. You know what I mean? And he's got to be, so his energy level, his intensity level, that's all got to pick up for me, for him to become that legitimate third guy for a team that's going to win a couple rounds in the playoffs.
Well, he's definitely going to have an opportunity tonight going against Steven Adams. So it should be interesting
Hard hat.
how those two match up.
Yeah.
I tell you one guy who brings it every night.
You're going to hear a lot
Paul
of that.
George.
What that's going to be? Steven Adams hitting Nurkic.
PG3 getting ready. Game coming up at the top of the hour. We'll be back with much more of the pregame show.